This podcast was recorded on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
Hello and welcome to The Real Story with Joe Hildebrand. An absolutely massive week all around the world. We've got what's going on behind these huge global events, including the massive ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Is it real? What is behind it? And what is the impact going to be? Plus, is Elon Musk a closet neo-Nazi? I've got the answer for that too, would you believe it? And we've also solved the Australia Day problem once and for all. We have found a way to change the date without changing the date and make everybody happy. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely 100%. It's absolutely brilliant. You'll find out all about that on the show this week. First up this week, I want to talk about what inevitably became the biggest story out of Donald Trump's inauguration as President of the United States of America. And that is, of course, everything but Donald Trump's inauguration as the President of the United States. I mean, who cares about that, right? The guy's just become the leader of the free world again. One of only two people in history, by the way, to have two numbers of president to his title. So he's both the 45th and the 47th president. If you get two terms in a row, you just get one number. He's got two. And the only other person to lose an election and then come back in an election is some other guy that no one cares about and no one can remember. But of course, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the president, are we? No, even Donald Trump's enemies aren't talking about the fact that he's just become leader of the free world again, because they seem to get distracted by things that aren't really important. I wonder why we're not learning that lesson. No, they're talking about the fact that Elon Musk is a neo-Nazi. Yes, they're obsessed with the fact, in air quotes, that Elon Musk apparently did a Nazi salute at a rally. Now, you would have seen the footage if you've been anywhere online, or more likely you've probably seen a still photo of Elon Musk doing what's called a Sieg Heil, which is like a bit like kind of a Heil Hitler, but with, a bit more kind of, frills and trimmings. So he has gone to a rally and he's speaking. As you know, Elon Musk gets very, very excitable at rallies. Some have called it a bit of a sort of autistic tic. He's a very excitable guy. Put him next to Barron Trump and you'll see how excitable he is. That is one morose teenager, but that's another story. So Elon Musk is addressing this massive rally and he does what CNN, they couldn't even name it. They couldn't even speak its name. It was like Beelzebub, Lucifer, Voldemort. So he's doing a strange salute. It's a strange salute. I mean, you can see, our audience can see what sort of a salute it was. But of course it wasn't that kind of salute. It wasn't even really a salute at all. If you listen to what Elon Musk was actually saying, he was saying, we owe this all to you. We're going to do incredible things for this country. This country is born again. It's saved. It's wonderful. And it's all to you. It's all thanks to you. I offer you my heart. My heart belongs to you. I give you my heart. And then he sort of flutters it away, sort of almost like he's sort of blowing a kiss. And he sends it soaring like he's going to Mars, which he probably will do one day. And then he does something else you never ever do in a Sieg Heil, right? Which is he then sort of turns around, not all the way. If you look at Nazis, they're very specific with their rotations. It's all very much 190, 180, 270, 360 degrees. You know what I'm saying? They're a very specific, disciplined, leather trouser wearing bunch of genocidal maniacs. But Musk just sort of turns around, he grabs his heart again and sort of says, I give you my heart as well. My heart goes out to you, is what he says. And then he does the impression of taking his heart from his body and sending it soaring out to the crowd, right? So that's just a sort of the technicalities, if you like. That's just the sort of the physics of what Elon Musk did. Okay, so it was different, Was it a great look? I remember when, tabloids tried to say they caught a picture of the Queen throwing a Nazi salute. Turns out she was just waving at someone, once you saw the whole footage. And of course, all the Donald Trump supporters have gotten all sorts of pictures of presidents from Barack Obama or candidates like Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris also holding their hands in a similar fashion, because it's something very common. The Romans did it too. It's kind of the way you raise your hands at people. That's why the Nazis were very good at appropriating other people's symbols. The swastika was also appropriated from ancient Hindu tradition, I believe, in India. So, yeah, I still wouldn't go around wearing one. That's just a bit of an FYI, just a bit of historical context. Still pretty bad. But that is what Elon Musk was doing, right? None of that matters, right? None of that matters, because the theory, of course, is that this was actually just him signaling to all his followers that, we're all really neo-Nazis. See, Kyle, we all love Hitler. Donald Trump, he really is literally Hitler. Because they're throwing Nazi salutes. He's a closet neo-Nazi. I knew it. They're neo-Nazis. We all knew it. Ever since Madison Square Garden, we knew they were neo-Nazis. They were just hiding it from us. This is the thing. If you're a closet neo-Nazi, there's one thing it's very important not to do. Let's go around telling people about it. You don't tell people you're a neo-Nazi. You don't go throwing Nazi salutes. If you're going to be a closet neo-Nazi, you hide that. You cover it up. You don't go. Well, so this is the running theory, right? Okay. So Donald Trump and Elon Musk are secretly Nazi sympathizers who the Jewish community absolutely adores, who are the strongest defenders of Israel on the planet, but they're also Nazis. And I've got to say, being a bit of a sort of student of history, Nazism plus loving Jews doesn't really work. Like the Jew hatred is kind of baked into the ideology. It's pretty foundational. Like without the anti-Semitism, there's not a great deal to Nazism. Yes, they killed a lot of other people, but the whole theory about the Jews running the world and we have to expel them from not just Germany, but all of Europe. That doesn't really work with being a strong defender, ally, and friend of the Jewish community and staunchly defending the only Jewish state on the planet in Israel. Again, I think that's a slight inconsistency. But nonetheless, the narrative appears to be Donald Trump, Elon Musk, all of them, they're all neo-Nazis, and they pretended they weren't through the whole election campaign, and then they waited for Inauguration Day, and they decided that the way they would reveal to the world that they were all in fact Nazis was by Elon Musk throwing a Nazi salute and getting it wrong. Like they could have just put out a press release. Could have just said it. But no, that's how we know they're secretly neo-Nazis, because Elon Musk did a weird Nazi salute at a rally. That's the theory. And you wonder why they won. Speaking of Israel, and let's face it, no one in the world is speaking of anything but these days. Don't want to be a downer, but situation there has been pretty grim, as you might know. And there was, of course, the ceasefire a few days ago, and everyone kind of said, oh, fantastic, that's great news, that's awesome. And I was kind of tempted to think the same thing as well, but I just couldn't. I just couldn't feel happy about it. And for a little while, I couldn't put my finger on why. And then I realised what it was I was kind of thinking. And I think we've seen other people sort of come around a little bit to this way of thinking, in the days after it was announced and then settled and started. So since October 7th, you've got the worst mass attack on Jews since the Holocaust, the worst mass murder of Jews in the 21st century since the Second World War. Then you have the retaliation by Israel against Hamas, which also involves the mass killing of huge numbers of civilians, more than 40,000 so far. And that is in total. A lot of them were Hamas fighters. Obviously, the numbers are disputed. Anyway, so you've got this horrendous act of provocation on October 7. Then you've got this massive scale retaliation. And then about 15 months later, okay, it's a ceasefire. You give back the rest of the hostages you took. Indeed, not all of them are alive, but still. And then we'll hand over almost 2,000, 1,900 or so prisoners, detainees that we've got in Israel, and we'll give them back to you. And that's that. That's what all this bloodshed, potentially World War III in the Middle East, and that's what it comes down to. And you have to wonder just what the point of all of this was, if not just sheer destruction, if not just sheer burn it all. That was Hamas's objective when they launched the terror attack. Israel was about to forge a new treaty with Saudi Arabia, which they were working towards under the Abraham Accords, which was started the last time Donald Trump was in offer. And Hamas and Hezbollah, the latter of which especially, but both of which receive huge amounts of money from Shia Iran, which is deeply opposed to Sunni Saudi Arabia and didn't want it to get any more influence, and of course wants to wipe Israel off the face of the map as well, decided, no, we have to blow this up. So they blow that up. And then you have the other objective of terrorism in any sort of organised capacity, and that is to try to provoke, and again, this is something that the IRA posits. I'm not sure if they think about it that hard. I think a lot of them just like killing their enemies. But there is a school of thought that one objective of terrorism, especially when the terrorists are labouring under the illusion that they're actually just freedom fighters for a noble cause, is that you provoke such a heavy-handed response from your enemy that you actually create sympathy for your side. And guess what? It worked. Israel had a huge amount of sympathy, an overwhelming amount of sympathy on October 7, 2023, after the attacks, to the point where a lot of people, I think, even who were skeptic of Israel, went, oh, God, maybe they were onto something after all. Maybe these people really were out to get him, really do hate him, really do want to wipe them from the planet. And then, understandably, Israel, as the US did after 9/11, Israel just roared. It was so shocked and horrified, not just by the scale of the attack, but by their brutality. And so Israel just goes, like Russell Crowe in Gladiator, just goes, unleash hell, unleash hell. And they just, and they did. They gave people warning. They said, get out, go south, whatever. They said, we're going to do this. We're going to launch these strikes. You better not be there. And of course, there were facilities underneath, hospitals or schools or whatever that Hamas was using. Hamas was using an underground network. And of course, the way to get bombs underground is through the ground. And so there were, either by accident or by way of, collateral damage, as it's euphemistically called, there were huge numbers of civilians killed in order for Israel to meet its objectives to kill the Hamas masterminds who organised the attack. The number one mastermind who organised the attack was, in fact, a former Israeli detainee released in a former prisoner swap. So it tells you something as well. And so they managed to do that. Hamas manages to do that. But to what end? It itself gets wiped out. Its leader gets wiped out. Pretty much all of its militants get wiped out. And it is no more. And what's in it for Israel? They get rid of Hamas as a military leadership, but they've probably radicalised, made a generation of new enemies who grew up in the rubble of Gaza, who aren't going to understand the context, who have been fed on lies and propaganda on their side, and who will hate Israel possibly even more. And then you have this hostage and prisoner swap, where effectively Hamas is replenishing all the terrorists or the extremists, the fighters, the warriors that it lost to Israel, that all got killed. It's replenishing its stocks. It's getting them all back out of jail. And Israel, of course, has to do this because it needs to get these innocent people who have been living these abominable conditions back to it. Both sides are immeasurably worse off than they were before this started. And that's what I thought when the ceasefire happened. A ceasefire we can't even guarantee will hold, because as soon as there's some kind of breach, you can guarantee it will all start up again. And you just think, is that really good news, or does this just show how absolutely and utterly stupid and pointless and ugly this whole episode has been? Well, look, I promised you earlier in the show that we were going to solve the Australia Day problem once and for all. Every year it rolls around almost as though it's an annual event. The debate around whether or not January 26th can actually be celebrated or commemorated or acknowledged as Australia Day, given it was the day of white settlement here in Sydney, and that wipes out recognition of, 40, 60, whatever it is, 1,000 years of Indigenous history. Well, there is one solution that just keeps popping up. It was a solution that one Indigenous leader proposed, and then I saw another Indigenous leader propose it completely as though it was a separate thing. And I was actually chatting to a mate of mine, and I had this idea. I think, oh my God, this is what we could do. And then he said, no, there's actually two other Indigenous leaders who thought of that before you. And then a political soulmate of mine, a fellow traveller, if you will, who is a very influential and interesting thinker in the Labor Party, he came up with the exact same idea as well, except he knew where it came from. Point being, we've got it solved. Nick Dyrenforth, the Executive Director of the John Curtin Research Centre. Welcome to The Real Story. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thanks, Joseph. Flattery will get you everywhere in life. So
it's certainly got me thus far. It got me this podcast. So
it's fabulous to be here.
It is fabulous to have you, my friend. I can't believe it's taken so long. So talk us through, you've written a great piece for the Australian Financial Review, even though it is technically a rival newspaper to my own, but I'm nothing if not magnanimous. And that's what Australia Day should be about, bringing people together. We're not opposing sides. We're all part of the same family. And talk us through your idea to save Australia Day.
This is not an original argument. Noel Pearson, someone that I have a huge amount of time, huge amount of respect for. Because he's idealistic and he's pragmatic.
Yep.
So he's a bit of a soulmate to me, and I think that's the way you think as well.
Same.
You've got to have, soft heart, hard head.
Yep.
That's the way to get things done in life, and to be in the centre. So he's made this really interesting argument about Australia Day, which I like a lot, and I've advanced it because I think it can't be left to Indigenous Australians. And I don't like the divisive, messy debate. It's like the movie Groundhog Day.
Yeah, that's right.
Australia Day, and we have the far left out there talking about change the dates, and then we have some on the right who I just don't think have any. They lack empathy. They lack the ability to put themselves in the shoes of First Nations people, Indigenous Australians, and understand why. Yep. There's a problem with January 2026. So Noel's argument is we're not going to change the date, okay? It's too divisive. It's not going to get up, okay? And I make the argument, have a look what happened with The Voice. You saw what happened with The Voice, Joe. Have a look at what happened with, Joe and I, you and I, we were old enough to vote in the 1999 Republican referendum. Two very similar results, mate.
Yep.
What happened was, the inner cities vote yes to both proposals.
Yep.
Further you went out from the CBD into the middle and outer suburbs, into the regions, the no vote went higher and higher and higher. And that would, if you had a vote about changing the date, that would happen again.
Yes.
And all it would do, you'd have a nasty, divisive debate, and it would get us nowhere. Okay. The other sort of crucial point to make too, and a mate of mine, Cos Samaras, I think you know Cos.
I know Cos, yep.
Cos, Cos makes a brilliant point because when people go, oh, why do people vote no to The Voice? Why don't they want to change the date? And Cos says, do you know what? Lots of migrants, most migrants, when they become Australians, when do they become Australians? They become Australians on Australia Day. So they have what he calls a sentimental attachment to the date. So it's not we're not going to change the date, okay? But we need to actually think about the sensitivities around the date. My idea of patriotism, Joe, is, it's a dignified pride in Australia. I think we're the greatest country on earth.
Agreed.
There's so much right. We're one of the oldest continuous democracies on earth. We're the land of liberty and freedom, the fair go. Egalitarianism is etched in our souls.
Yes.
But real patriots actually look at their country and go, how can we make it better? Okay? And so this is why I'm proposing this idea around January 26th. Extend the date. Hashtag extend the date. That's what Noel Pearson argues, being pragmatic. Why don't we stretch it over January 25, January 26, okay? As he says, on 1788, on the 25th of January, Indigenous people, call them Aboriginal nations, they had sovereignty over the entire continent of what we now call Australia, okay? The next day, on the 26th of January, the British have rocked up and declared sovereignty in the name of the British monarch over the entire continent. So in that space of 24 hours, we've had a
big change, huh?
It's a pretty,
that's right.
Tens of thousands of years that just overnight,
that's right.
Terra nullius, never, but
and also you can't pretend that didn't happen as well.
That's
so
what
I
Noel
think
says. He says
exactly. That's right.
In a day is the worst way to go about it. Because want to move it to, I don't know, whenever throughout the year, St. Patrick's Day, my birthday, March 17, that'd be a great day. What you're doing is erasing history. You're cancelling history, and it's actually it's counterproductive because you're getting people to forget the past.
That's right. You're pretending that everything's fine. Oh no, it was New Year's Day because that's when we became a federation in 1901. It's like but a lot happened. That's not the before way. That.
We actually want people to think hard, okay? And so extend the date, have it over 2 days. January 25, and these are public holidays, January 25 should be a day of introspection, of sombre reflection, led by Indigenous Australians, okay?
Absolutely.
Then January 26, we roll into January 26, we fire up the barbecues, we crack out the tinnies or stubbies or, in my case, the non-alcoholic mocktails these days. The sad
We're all at that age, aren't we?
Sad Gen X. Yeah. With three that are having these days. And we celebrate what makes Australia great. And we plan and we talk about how we can make this country the greatest country on earth even better.
I love that. I cannot punch a hole in it for the life of me. It seems like the perfect solution.
Who's going to vote against it?
You couldn't. Exactly. And I think even instead of extend the date, you could call it double the date. Double Australia Day. I couldn't have put it better myself, and that's why we got you on the show. Nick Dyrenfirth, Executive Director of the John Curtin Research Centre. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, mate. A pleasure.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it didn't get too heavy in the middle there. Leave us a review. Leave us a 5-star rating. There are no other star ratings that we accept. Drop us a line at therealstory@novapodcast.com.au, or you can go onto Instagram. I'm at Joe_Hildebrand. You can slide into my DMs, and whatever means of communication you prefer, you can just ask us to look into something, give us any feedback, any questions. We answer all questions completely and absolutely truthfully, reliably and honestly. You can also read my columns every Monday and Saturday in the Daily Telegraph or various other news mastheads right around the country. And I'll see you next week.